Hello everyone, my name is Nate Gelman, and today I'm here with Danvers High School Athletic Director Drew Betts. So Drew, how and when did you become Athletic Director of Danvers High School?
Well, thanks for having me on here today. I became the Athletic Director of Danvers High School last July, so I'm almost at a full calendar year at this point.
I'm just curious, did you have any past jobs in athletics before becoming Athletic Director?
Yeah, so I was actually the Athletic Director at Salem Academy Charter School for 12 years prior to coming to Danvers. So I was at Salem Academy from 2011 to 2023. So I was there for a good chunk of time.
How was that experience? Was that a good experience?
It was a great experience. It was an opportunity to work in a 6th to 12th grade school in which we were able to work together with a lot of different people to sort of build and establish our athletic programs.
So, as Athletic Director, what would you say are like the most important responsibilities that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our work in the athletic department is kind of behind the scenes of how can we make sure everybody has what they need going into their games, practices. Coaches have, appropriate equipment, they have transportation, everybody's on time. And so I think, a lot of our work is around scheduling and communication to make sure that everybody has that opportunity to, so that way our coaches and student athletes can be successful at what they do.
So sort of like, what would you say are like certain like strategies or ways that you kind of communicate with like people around, like to sort of make sure that things go right and smoothly?
Yeah, so we try and be incredibly organized to make sure that things are going smoothly, so that way there's not a lot of last minute changes or there's no surprises. So I think predictability is very important in our job, so that way everybody knows what to expect, whether it's practice times, turf times, time in the field house. And I think the more things we do to keep that organized and predictable, hopefully it makes their jobs a little bit easier.
Obviously you like work with like the coaches of the other teams, but like are there any other people that you sort of communicate with, like other than like the coaches with the teams, like as athletic director, to sort of schedule and make sure things go well?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of different people. So we work with the coaches to help sort of set the schedules, and each team is going to have a set number of non-league games. So we compete in the NEC, so that gives us a set number of games that we'll play against certain NEC and conference opponents. And then I work with our coaches to schedule our non-league games. So that includes reaching out to other athletic directors, other coaches, to make sure it kind of fits in that schedule. And Morgan Sittars, who's our assistant athletic director, she and I work super closely together to make sure that we have clear and accurate schedules for everybody to see.
So obviously you haven't been athletic director for a super long time, but like which sports team that have you sort of been the most impressed with watching or seeing during your first year?
Yeah, so I mean, I could never pinpoint it to just one specific team, but this past year there was a number of teams that had some great success. Our boys cross country team will have won their first ever state championship. Our football team will have made it to the Final Four. Gymnastics will have finished third in the state. We had one student athlete win a state championship in wrestling, and we had a number of other teams qualify and host state tournament games. So as a whole, I think it was a pretty successful athletic year, and we had a really strong senior class that led that. And I think as many as 23 student athletes are going to go on and play a college sport.
That's great to hear. What division does Danvers High compete in? Is it like D2, D3?
Yeah, so in boys and girls basketball, it's Division II. In cross country, it's 2. In most other sports, it's 3. And then football, we are 5.
What would you say is your favorite part of being athletic director?
My favorite part is a lot of times, so when it comes to sports, like I always say, it's not a bad job when you're around athletics all day. And I think a lot of times people love sports, and the student athletes and our coaches love sports. So kind of getting to see people in spaces that they're really passionate about is something that I really enjoy seeing on a daily basis.
So speaking of passion, this is going to be kind of an interesting question, and I asked this because when I was in my senior year of high school, there was a kid who was in one of my classes, and he was at a girls' hockey game, and it was a playoff game, intense atmosphere, and I remember he was complaining in class the next day because apparently he was getting rowdy or he said something, but all I know is that our athletic director at the game sort of took him aside and yelled at him and got mad at him because I guess he wasn't sort of acting right. So with that being said, what is like your opinion or personal rules on like how people should act during games or stuff like trash talking or chanting?
Yeah, so I'll say like on the court, on the ice, on the field, that's something I think our coaches do a great job of sort of controlling and modeling. When it comes to spectators in the stands, people are super passionate, and my biggest piece is always just like try and keep it positive and kind of make sure you're cheering for your team versus against someone else or against an official. And I know that's easier said than done, but my big thing is to always just try and keep it positive and keep it about the student athletes themselves.
What would you say, I asked you what your favorite part is, what would you say is sort of like your least favorite part of being athletic director, or a part that you can maybe do without?
Yeah, I would say my least favorite part, the hardest part I always find is, everybody's season always comes to an end at some point. And whether that's in, we look at our girls soccer team losing in heartbreaking fashion in double overtime. And like, it's kind of
tough.
Yeah, it's kind of I look at it as a positive and a negative because it's really tough to sort of see those seniors and sort of how distraught or upset they may be, but then it's also a little bit of a sense of pride because of knowing how much they will have, how much energy and effort they will put into the season. So it's kind of I look at it as like one of the worst parts because you have to see that, and I will say as someone that competed in sports throughout my whole life, there's nothing that can be said to someone in that moment that's going to make them feel any better. But I will say that's also a source of pride because it's like that they will have left everything out there.
So you kind of miss it when sort of the season ends and just seeing it come to an end. Yeah, I felt that too because I played tennis and just like when that season ended, I would feel like, oh man, like it's so weird.
Yep.
Yeah. So obviously you work with a lot of different coaches of a lot of different sports teams, and is there a coach that sort of sticks out to you throughout, I guess, your short time that you have a really good relationship with?
The piece that we talked about around communication, I think we try and do our best to keep an open line of communication so that coaches know what's expected of them, that we're always there as a support. And when coaches are in season, we're typically in pretty constant communication with them throughout. So I wouldn't say it's just one coach, but I think our goal is to try and be as supportive as we can of all of our coaches.
And I don't know, like what would you say is like something that you hope to have accomplished or have done like throughout your time as athletic director at Danvers High?
That's a tough question. I wouldn't say it's just one thing, but my hope is to provide a space in which we create experiences for our student athletes that, when they're 25, 30, 40, 45, they're still continuing to talk about. So whether it's hosting an NEC championship in track and field this year, or, creating that fan bus for a situation in which they're traveling to a away game for a tournament game. A lot of what we shoot to do is try and create the best possible experience. And I'm hoping that the more we are able to engage our student athletes, the more experiences we can help create for them.
So like memorable experiences that they'll be talking about like many years down the road.
Yeah, okay. I hope so.
Yeah, and sort of going into my final question, are there any ways that you've sort of gotten involved with the Danvers community, say, outside of Danvers high school sports?
Yeah, so fortunately, starting last summer, I tried to do as much as I possibly could in that and working with like our rec department to sort of learn how things are done. Our coaches do a great job in which they host a number of different youth nights. And so that's something that we kind of look at as like a little bit of a feeder system because hopefully if you're playing Danvers youth soccer, one day you're going to be playing at Danvers High School. So we've been trying to work with our rec department, our youth programs to sort of support them, whether it's through facilities, whether it's through students volunteering to officiate or be referees. Anything that we can do to allow sort of those windows of time for our coaches and student athletes to kind of meet some of these younger students, I look at it as like a huge benefit to hopefully, establish a strong culture for them moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate having you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.